And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Ryan Harris, who writes, "Hey, John, I know you guys talked about the huge $450 million that Netflix is paying for two Knives Out sequels. But I just saw that the number is actually bigger than that, and Rian Johnson and Daniel Craig are each getting a cool $100 million each." Let me repeat that. Rian Johnson and Daniel Craig are each getting a cool $100 million each. How can they afford to pay those kinds of numbers and still produce two movies? Thanks. Okay, thanks for sending that in, Ryan. And look, I think this is bigger news than even we made it out to be. Netflix stepping up and paying by the way, the number is actually $469 million. $469 million Netflix has put up to acquire the rights to Knives Out 2 and Knives Out 3 once Rian Johnson makes them. They get the rights to put it on their streaming service. These are astronomical, unbelievable numbers. Absolutely incredible. And of course, like Ryan just pointed out, a part of that is that Rian Johnson and Daniel Craig each stand to get cut a check in excess of $100 million each. This comes to us from the folks over at Joe Blow, who writes, "It was initially said that the deal was in the $400 to $450 million range, but the final number came out to be $469 million, which is a little crazy. The Hollywood Reporter sources have claimed that Rian Johnson, Daniel Craig, and producer Ram Bergman are looking to walk away with upwards of $100 million each. It gives Rian Johnson complete creative control, which means that he won't have to take any notes from Netflix. Like, basically, all Netflix is doing is they are put up the money to have the rights to take his movies and put them on Netflix. They get no input on the movies that he makes or how he does it. He has complete creative control. This is a dream situation for a dude like him. Anyway, we continue on. He has complete creative control, which means he won't have to take any notes from Netflix. But it does say, the one caveat says that Daniel Craig must star in both of the sequels, which he probably would have anyway, since the whole franchise is built around this character, and that they must have at least the same budget of the original film, which cost somewhere in the realm of $40 million. This of us comes to us from Joe Blow. Rob, look, this is not a financially wise decision by Netflix. This is like a sports team way overpaying for a very good, but paying like a $200 million contract to a good wide receiver. It's like you're overpaying a lot, but this is the state of things in the streaming wars right now. Right now, if you're one of these streamers and you've got, like Rob, there were just reports coming out too, we'll probably talk about this tomorrow, that Netflix is starting to lose market share. They've got Disney Plus nipping at their heels. HBO Max is cranking out great content. Amazon has got a whole bunch of great stuff coming. On and on and on. They have got to get serious, and they are, by writing out a check for $469 million. Netflix is saying, oh, hell yes, we're serious. We're very serious. And we're willing to take a loss on this to make a statement. And getting two Academy-nominated film like Knives Out, to get those two films to be exclusive to Netflix, that is definitely making a statement. As far as Rian Johnson goes, and his production partner, Ram Bergman, and Daniel Craig, each getting in the neighborhood of $100 million each. Rian Johnson. You know what, Rob? Maybe a couple years ago, Rian Johnson was probably thinking at some point, man, I'm doing a Star Wars movie. That's going to be my big financial windfall.
Yeah.
Who would ever thought writing a little Agatha Christie homage murder mystery whodunit low budget film was actually going to be the film that sets him, his children, and his grandchildren up financially for the rest of their lives? Who would have guessed that would have been it? Now, I do want to point something out. I think it was Ryan in the comment section there, wrote in and asked, how on earth are they going to be able to afford being able to do these movies when they're paying these guys that much money? It's a fair question. Let's jump over for a second into the Campea classroom for a moment, shall we? All right, let's go in here. So Netflix Netflix puts up 469 million, right? Okay. So between Ryan, Bam, yeah, that's his name, Bam. Okay, sure, Bam, and Daniel Craig, that accounts for 300 million of that. That leaves them 169 million to make two movies, right? 369 or $169 million to make two movies. The only thing that it says in their contract is that each movie must have at least a $40 million budget. That's it. That's $80 million. That leaves $89 million left over. So two movies could cost 80 mil, which leaves that leaves 89 million left over. And Rob, there's a couple things you got to keep in mind about that. That $40 million that they made the first film for, that included Daniel Craig's salary. Guess what? Yeah. They don't have to worry about that now because that's taken care of in that other 100 million. They just need to be able to make these movies so they can actually they can give each of these sequels a 50% budget increase, Rob. They can make each of the sequels for 60 million each, which comes out to 120, which still leaves them with $49 million left over to distribute amongst their other partners. So yes, I understand why Ryan writes in and says, wait a minute, if they're giving Ryan Johnson $100 million and they're giving Daniel Craig $100 million and they're giving Rian Johnson's production partner $100 million, how are they supposed to still make movie? They've got plenty of money left over. Plenty of money left over to make these things. So I still think it's a little bit of a questionable move by Netflix, although I get where they're coming from. But for Rian Johnson and Daniel Craig and all the folks who are going to be involved with Knives Out 2 and 3, Rob, this is a fanatical win. An absolute fanatical win of the types of dollar figures we're talking. Rian Johnson is laughing all the way to the bank right now, as is Daniel Craig. Daniel Craig is like, Bond who? Like, Bond what? $100 million. Anyway, Rob, you hear these numbers, you see this story. What's your take on this?
You know, this really, I think, sets a bad precedent. You remember when in like the 80s and 90s you had stars like a Jim Carrey would get paid $20 million to be in The Cable Guy?
Yeah.
And then that means normally a person would get paid, your talent gets paid a portion of the budget of the actual film. Now, what this is doing is it's saying once again that the talent itself is worth a lot more. Your relationship with your talent is worth a lot more than the movies they're making. And at the end of the day, I think that is a dangerous precedent to set for any streamer or any studio or anything, because what they're selling is not the talent. They're selling the actual content.
Right.
And what does that say to any other writer or director or actor or producer that's expecting to get into bed with Netflix? I mean, what is, other than outside James Bond, what is Daniel Craig's box office draw? I mean, what was the box office of Knives Out worldwide?
Not a lot.
And I'll bet you that they're paying the producer, the director, and the actor in excess of what Knives Out grossed worldwide theatrically. I don't understand what.
By the way, $311 million is how much Knives Out made worldwide.
I mean, you're talking about a worldwide theatrical gross that almost is the salaries of the three, not even the crew. You're talking about three people. I'm like, that to me is, hell, if they each made 10 million or 20 million, Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins were each given a $10 million bonus for Wonder Woman 2, Wonder Woman 84. I honestly do not understand. Maybe one of the industry oracles that send me emails explain when I'm wrong on my show, will please explain to me under what economic model this could possibly work and what kind of precedent. I mean, talk about an arms escalation in the streaming wars. I mean, if this is the precedent people are going to expect to get, I just don't see how this business is sustainable. How are you supposed to? I mean, John, in terms of content, how is Netflix gonna fill their roster, making big movies every week, paying this kind of money? How do they make this work? Are they going to get $300 million worth of subscribers out of these movies?
No.
I don't get it at all. I just don't get it.
And I think you raise a good point. Like, look, like I said off the top, I don't believe this is an economic model that does work for Netflix. This is a loss proposition. And I think they understand that. It's a lost proposition. I compare it a little bit to, we were talking about this earlier, I compare it to the situation with the PS5. Sony, not everybody knows this, Sony actually sells the PlayStation 5 at a loss. It actually costs them more to make and ship the PS5 than what they charge people for it. But they do that because they believe they get more benefits later on. Like, people own the PS5, they're going to buy content on the PS5, they get into the PS5 ecosphere, they'll make money from them later on. It seems to me like Netflix's philosophy here is, we get this thing, we're never going to make our money back on it. Like, we're not going to make our money back on it. But it sets us as a prestige title. We're getting this Academy level film in here, and Knives Out is bloody fantastic. It's such a fantastic movie. We're going to do this. We're going to get all this prestige. But I think the best point you raised there, Rob, is that what does this do moving forward? What happens now when you approach a Martin Scorsese and say, hey, Martin, we would love to be the home. We would love Netflix to be the home of your next movie after Flowers or Killers of the Flower Moon. And, hey, we're willing to give you, like you personally, like a $30 million check. Marty Scorsese is going to go, that's funny. I just saw you gave Rian Johnson $100 million. You don't think my name's as good as Rian Johnson? I'm Martin fucking Scorsese. And they could just have bit themselves in the ass moving forward. But this causes problems too, Rob. It's not just problems for Netflix. This is going to cause an issue. I guarantee you today, Amazon, Disney, HBO Max, they're all looking at Netflix saying, what the hell are you doing? Because now other talent is going to start going to Disney Plus and saying, well, Netflix just gave Daniel Craig a $100 million deal, and they're really going to screw up the marketplace, and that could be the long-term thing.
I mean, not since like Jack Nicholson made like $65 million on Tim Burton's Batman, with all the ancillary markets and how well that film did theatrically at the time. I mean, this has got to be one of the most unprecedented talent deals in Hollywood history in terms of an upfront payment. And what I just don't understand is, it seems to me that the films themselves, the content that Netflix wants to have subscribers come back to, that's getting the short shrift. When you're paying more money to the talent than you are to the actual product that they're making, I think that's problematic, especially because at the end of the day, you know what? Daniel Craig's certainly a draw, and Rian Johnson is a world-class filmmaker. I mean, I've liked him as a filmmaker since Brick, and of course, I loved his episodes of Breaking Bad. But this kind of thing is so ass backwards, it seems, because you're not putting your money into the actual content that's being made. And at the end of the day, it's not like Netflix is slapping Daniel Craig's face on a poster. This is going to be part of the whole Netflix mill that grinds things out, and people are not going to be like, are people going to be like, oh my God, can you believe it? Rian Johnson and Daniel Craig's new and Bam's new team up is going to be their marquee title for March. I need to sign up for that. I mean, it's not like they're going to market it any differently than anything else on their platform. I think the economics sets a dangerous precedent. And I think what it does is it takes the emphasis once again, especially for Hollywood, because all the managers and the agents and the lawyers and everybody looks at this, and it's going to make it harder to get every movie made because talent's going to expect this kind of a deal from a streaming service. I think it's really foolhardy, to be honest. Now, I don't understand it.
I've heard people making the statements, and I guess, like, John, you don't understand. what Netflix is paying for really at the end of the day is they're paying for the rights to these movies. It's not so much that they're paying Rian Johnson this money. It's not so much that they're paying Daniel Craig this money. It's that you got to look at the overall number, they would say to me. You got to look at the overall number and understand that that's what they're paying for the property, for the IP. And yeah, it's getting distributed to Rian Johnson. And yeah, a bunch of it is getting distributed to Daniel Craig. And yeah, but you got to look at overall. And okay, I get that. You can look at it that way, although I think there are some massive logic holes in that as well. But even if you want to look at it like that, paying, as great as Knives Out is, it is not an IP in its entirety that is worth $469 million. I love it. I thought it was one of the best movies to come out in the last number of years, but it is not worth that much money. Forget how much you're paying Daniel Craig. Forget how much you're paying Rian Johnson. It's just a property that's not worth that much. Apple Plus put up $200 million in its entirety for Killers of the Flower Moon. $200 million. That means that's Marty Scorsese, Leonardo DiCaprio, maybe the hottest tandem in all of Hollywood, right? For this thing in there. That means you are valuating Knives Out movies to be worth more, like $69 million more per film than you are that. And it just seems like, so whichever way you want to break it down, Rob, the way you articulate the problems with paying a Daniel Craig or a Rian Johnson that much money, although good on him. Because as you always say, Rob, it's not what you deserve, it's what you negotiate.
Yeah,
they got
I know.
it. So good on Daniel Craig and Rian Johnson. But to pay them that much money, but it's also when you take a step back and say, is the entire IP even worth this? And the answer is no. And the next time Marty Scorsese or one of these other filmmakers are fielding offers from a Disney Plus or an Apple TV or an Amazon or an HBO Max, and they come to him with the $200 million, he's going to turn his nose up at it. It's like, market says my movie's now worth at least $350 million. And this could have repercussions. Rob, how do you see this affecting the other studios? Like, even looking away from Netflix, what is the ripple effect of this on the other major streamers?
Well, I think it's terrible that Amazon paid $250 million for the rights to Lord of the Rings. I thought that was an insane payment, but I understand where they're coming from. Lord of the Rings can sustain them for years, decades if they wanted to, as long as they make good content. But at the end of the day, what I find distressing about this is that it shifts the emphasis away from the finished content. Once again, Hollywood used to talk about so-and-so is getting a huge payday. And for a long time, with content, John, let's say you're making a movie that's 2 hours long. You do a show every day that's 2 hours long. And how much does it cost to make? Not $65 million, not $100 million, but it's the same 2 hours. The same 2 hours people spend watching a Knives Out sequel is also spent watching your show. Now, they're different forms of entertainment, but it's the same 2 hours. And the question is, how much are those 2 hours worth when you're making narrative content? How much is that going to bring in terms of value on your channel? And for you, your 2 hour show brings an incredible amount of value to the people that watch this show, an incredible amount of value. Is a movie worth hundreds of millions of dollars more than the 2 hours people take to watch your show? And I ask, if you're going to make movies cost that much more money, is it really worth it? Is your 2 hours of time worth Daniel Craig and Bam and Rian Johnson getting paid $300 million? I mean, I would think that why not pay them each $20 million and make 3 Knives Out movies, make a trilogy, greenlight all 3. Then you have enough money to make the movies. I would think Rian Johnson too. Are they going to have enough money to make the films that they're making? Is this based, like you talked about, being based on an IP property, like they're getting the IP? It's not like people are running out and buying hot toys of the Knives Out cast. They're just not. How is this IP worth this much money? Are we going to be playing Knives Out immersive video games? Is there going to be an open sandbox Knives Out MMORPG soon? I don't think so. Where's this money? Where's the value? I don't get it.
Yeah, again, they think it's a prestige play. They're looking at it as a reputation.
But even if they paid him $20 million, that would have been a huge payday for them.
Yeah, except that I guess Ryan and Daniel weren't going to take that. They were like, okay, you want us to go Netflix and not go theatrical? You got to pay us this amount of money. And Netflix said, okay.
But you know what? Good on them.
Good on them.
Good
they
on them.
win. Daniel
You know,
Craig and Rian
if-
Johnson win. I again, good for them. I just think it was a kind of a questionable decision on Netflix's part. Question is, guys, what do you make of this? We're talking Daniel Craig and Rian Johnson each are going to get $100 million for Knives Out. Great movie, but not worth that much. How do you guys see this? Jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys.